And I also want to say, too, this problem of the cost of living increase and teacher salaries not keeping up with them, that is a nationwide problem. It's not just California. Across the nation, teachers are having like a severe deficit in their salaries because their salaries don't keep up with COLA. But let's go to the next mess. The teacher preparation mess. So, guys, this is different from state to state, and it is decided upon at a state level. We do a very good job, and I wanted to say this too, like we bring in on teachers from around the country on the podcast of trying to unpack exactly what it is. And it is very different from state to state. But one thing is true, honey, that I noticed is it kind of sucks everywhere. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of hoop jumping, a lot of paperwork, a lot of expensive and onerous crap that is not a good indicator of future efficacy later. So I'm going to let you respond to the teacher preparation mess.
You know, they've made it so hard to become a teacher these days, and coupled with the debt that it takes to just get your teaching credential, it's become an undesirable, although necessary, profession. It's one of those instances where we need teachers, just like we need doctors, we need police officers, first responders.
For now, until AI takes over.
I mean, what would happen if we had a shortage of doctors and there's only, a couple doctors in one city because they made it so difficult to become a doctor. And that's the thing is like people go into law, people go into engineering, these high paying jobs because they know that all the time that they spent passing the bar, getting their medical certification will pay off in full, right? Like it'll pay off greatly, but teachers can't say that. You have these kids getting their credentials, paying a lot of money, and now debt forgiveness is kind of off the table. So they just don't see a future in education. And, this has created a major shortage in districts all around the country. And I talk to young teachers who are trying to get it done. And even after they got their credential, it's multiple years of just lots of different hoops to jump through just to get your credential, and then to get hired permanently in a district. It's not like it's a given. Once you get hired, there's a trial run. And so it could potentially take someone 4 years after they've gotten their degree to finally have a solid career.
Not your degree, your credential.
Your credential.
Yeah.
Well, and so, I remember when I first started teaching in the early 2000s, 2000, 2001, I worked with teachers who had started teaching in the 70s. And when I was talking about getting my credential renewed, because you have to do it every 5 years, back then, I was complaining about the fact that I had to prove that I had taught in a school for the past 5 years in a public school. I had to prove 3 other things and then send that in along with the check. And these teachers were lifetime credentialed.
Yeah, at some point in the past, they decided to make them for 5 years, at least in California. And the last time I renewed mine, honey, I didn't have to prove anything.
No.
They just wanted my money.
Yeah,
it's all just a money grab.
Did the check clear?
Yeah,
right?
Did the check clear. Exactly. Look, the teacher preparation mess is disgusting and gross. It winds up being 8 years of higher education at your expense. And it really is eliminating a lot of really good talent. And again, really relies upon access to generational wealth because it is expensive. And are you going to want to go into this low paying gig and pay $100,000 for all this nonsense? No, you don't unless you have that kind of generational wealth. So if you're talking about we have a serious representation problem in our profession, that is a big reason why. Would you want to go into a low-paying gig and carry debt for the rest of your adult life for the glorious honor of being a teacher when your entire family is banking on you to get you out of generational poverty? No.
Well, and not only this, but I think a lot of younger kids who are getting into this profession don't really realize how much work goes into this profession. It's not just a 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. position. It's a lot of hours, a lot of time spent, and there's a lot more factors involved as well. The emotional impact, all sorts of things that make this profession, unfortunately, an undesirable one. You ask 10 kids what they want to be when they grow up, I guarantee the majority of them will say something else than teachers.
So in the teacher preparation mess episodes, just like in all of the episodes, you're going to hear different teachers come on and really explain what their personal narrative has been in different locations. So you get to hear in detail what is going on with the California preparation process. But you're going to hear other states too. So the next mess that we want to preview that we'll be unpacking in the podcast is the teacher shortage mess. And really, this is one of the first messes I began to dig into because I started in what we call a high needs, really low socioeconomic urban district where the teacher shortage was profound. But it's also really bad in special education settings. And we're going to have Dr. Paul Bruno come on. He is from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He wrote the only scholarly article trying to quantify the teacher shortage numbers, and it gets misquoted and taken out of context every year by members of the press because it's very difficult to characterize anything in K-12 at a national level, particularly this problem, because school districts are not reporting the numbers. They just aren't. And some of the worst offenders of non-reporting is the entire West Coast, our state of California. So you earlier mentioned liberal or conservative. A lot of these problems don't line up with a liberal or conservative slant. You wind up seeing red, blue, and purple in every tier of the problem. And this is definitely one of them. What is your experience with the teacher shortage mess?
Well, as somebody, from a boots on the ground perspective, I've seen, I work at a pretty big school, and there's been a lot of turnaround. Now, there's always turnaround in regard to retirements, right? I happen to be sort of in the middle. It's sort of a little further than the middle of my career. And where I started, there were a lot of people who were in their last decade of teaching. And so, especially after the pandemic, there's been a lot of people who just said, okay, I'm done, I'm retiring. And what I've seen is a lot of these waves of hiring with maybe a lack of real support on the ground level, the classroom level. A lot of young, newer teachers, not just young, but newer teachers just don't make it. And so I've seen a lot of turnaround in my department. I've seen a lot of turnaround in other departments, and turnaround being, people get hired for a year and then they don't make it. And it's really sad for me to get kids in my classroom and say, I had Mr. So-and-so last year. And it is sad, but it is hard when kids learn to love a person and they don't even get an explanation why they're not there anymore. And that's not even talking about the administrators problem, the shortage of administrators out there.
Yeah.
It's a revolving door. Like at my school, I've had probably 10 to 15 administrators in the past 10 years that I'm there. And my school has a lot of them. And we've seen people shuffled around. We've seen people come and go. And although we have had the same principal for some time, my career is kind of marked by principals who would be there for a year or two, add, vice principals as well. And they saw it often as a political step, as a stepping stone to maybe the district office. And since I've been teaching, it's been like that. You'll get a new principal. They'll be there for a couple years. They'll move up to district office or district office somewhere else. And so with the revolving door of leadership, a revolving door of teachers, it leaves kids sort of wondering who cares about them, right? Because the teacher that they love, the principal that they love, short time sometimes.
Well, and I don't think that the administrator's job is one that is tenable. Like, it's either you sell out, or maybe you never had any scruples to begin with, but you sell out or you burn out. Like, it's a really awful job.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of admins, and I every time I see them, they're just looking stressed out.
I know.
And if they're not, then they're not doing their job. And I commiserate with them. I feel so bad for them because they've been given a job that no one person, or in my case, 6 people could do.
No.
It's impossible to please everyone, to run a school. The system isn't set up for success. And so a lot of survival mode, a lot of putting out fires rather than having the opportunity to really stop and think about real permanent solutions and preventions to some of the problems that permeate every campus. So.
Okay, so now I'd like us to pivot to the special education mess. In the teaching biz, we refer to this as SPED for shorthand. The laws which set the stage for special education in K-12 were passed a year after Title IX law. It got this big system implemented to provide special education services to our nation's youth, unlike Title IX, which passed a year earlier. But it's not working as designed. And it winds up being this Herculean thing that piles on the paperwork for special education teachers and doesn't pay special education teachers more. I don't know if this is popular or not amongst K-12 teachers, but in my interview with Paul Bruno, we do talk about the fact that certain gigs should be paying more. But what happened recently in California was a teachers union went to the California legislature out of desperation because their leaders were failing to hire enough special education teachers, and it was having huge impacts on the ground floor on campuses. And we all know special education, of the teacher shortage mess, special education is one of the most impacted departments. And so instead of fixing that problem, which in a way would sort of fix why no one wants to be in our profession in general, but instead of addressing that problem, the legislature apparently turned to superintendents and leaders and school boards, and they cooked up a plan called inclusion. So basically what they're doing is they're just going to be mainstreaming a bunch of special education students and hiding behind this term inclusive tier 1 practices. So SPED is a lot. We unpack it with experts.